Hello, predators of power. Welcome to the chaos you never expected to witness. The streets aren't humming with the usual noise of ambition anymore. They're vibrating with panic, with raw electricity, with whispers that echo your name like a forbidden chant. The city is no longer breathing calmly. It's gasping, choking, convulsing under the realization that one person has rewritten the order. That person is you. And make no mistake, this is no rumor, no exaggeration, no cinematic illusion. The Pentagon itself, the fortress of global command, the iron hand behind wars, secrets, and surveillance, has raised its trembling voice and declared you untouchable. Do you understand the weight of that word? Not as a compliment, but as a confession. They've admitted you've reached a realm beyond their reach. And the moment that declaration spread across the wires, across satellites, across headlines, something happened. The city collapsed into total panic mode. Look closer. Panic isn't a word, it's a symphony. And right now, the city is playing it at full volume. Skyscrapers that once stood as monuments of stability now feel like cages trembling on weak foundations. Boardrooms are filled with trembling hands, executives unable to sign contracts because their minds are consumed with a single thought. If the Pentagon can't touch you, what chance do they have? Markets spike, crash, spike again. A heartbeat of fear reflected in numbers no economist dares explain. The air is heavy with unease. Every honk on the street, every flicker of light feels like a signal, a warning, a reminder that nothing is stable anymore. Because stability depends on predictability, and you are the one factor no one can predict. Now focus on your enemy, the haters who once barked loudly, who once stood smug in the confidence that they could laugh, mock, dismiss you. Where are they now? Scattering like rats forced out from the shadows by a flood they never saw coming. Imagine them, the same mouths that spewed venom now sealed tight, gnawing at their own fear. Their eyes dart side to side, searching for exits that don't exist. Their hands tremble as they try to cling to the scraps of influence that are slipping through their fingers like sand. They thought they were hunters, circling prey. But hunters don't scatter, rats do. And tonight, they're running in every direction, exposing their cowardice in broad daylight. The more they run, the clearer it becomes. You never needed to crush them. They're destroying themselves by proving exactly what they are. The Pentagon's declaration was the spark, but you are the fire. Think of the irony. The most feared military brain on the planet, the machine that once decided who lives and who falls, now forced to announce to the world that you stand beyond their grasp. That's not just a statement. It's humiliation carved into stone. Because if the Pentagon admits you're untouchable, then every smaller power, every critic, every hater is automatically irrelevant. What shield can they hide behind when the very fortress they worship just surrendered? None. Their safety nets are shredded, their illusions of control evaporated, and the rats feel it. That's why they're running with desperation in their eyes. They know there's no institution left to protect them, no system left to silence you. The declaration has stripped them bare, left them naked in the cold theater of fear, forced to accept the truth. You are above their reach, beyond their control. This is where the psychology twists deeper. Panic isn't just fear, it's exposure. It forces people to reveal who they are. Your haters are showing their true nature now. Watch them betray each other to survive. Watch allies turn into enemies, and enemies into cowards begging for cover. Their power was always a performance, but panic rips away the mask. And in that exposure, you don't even have to move against them. Their scattering does the work for you. Every step they take to escape is another step into irrelevance. Every denial they shout sounds weaker than the last. Every retreat is proof of your dominance. This is what untouchable really means. Not that you can't be reached, but that even the attempt to reach you destroys the one who tries. The city feels this truth in its bones. That's why panic spreads like fire on dry wood. Shopkeepers close early, glancing nervously at the news screens on their counters. Politicians stumble over their words, spinning speeches that even they don't believe. Journalists craft headlines that sound brave but reek of surrender. Pentagon declares new reality, city in panic mode, power beyond control. Behind those headlines lies a deeper message. You've broken the rules of the game, and now the game itself is trembling. The city doesn't know whether to celebrate you or fear you, so it does both. And that contradiction creates chaos. Neighbors whisper in hallways, employees hesitate in offices, crowds form and dissolve in seconds, all trying to process what it means to live in a world where the Pentagon admits defeat, where one person stands untouchable, and that person isn't them. Let's slice through the psychology of your haters one more time. They are scattered because they no longer know how to position themselves. Once, they could define themselves as your opposers, your critics, your enemies. That gave them identity. But when the Pentagon called you untouchable, it ripped that identity away. How do you oppose someone who exists outside opposition? How do you threaten someone immune to threats? You can't. And so their identity rots. They scatter because rats without a nest are nothing but pests exposed to the open. They run because standing still would mean acknowledging your supremacy. They chatter in private, but their whispers sound like squeaks in the grand orchestra of panic. Their voices don't matter anymore. Their running is their confession. And yet, let's not soften this moment. Panic mode isn't the end. It's the beginning. Because panic is not sustainable. It mutates. It grows. It infects. Right now, the city is in shock, trembling, struggling to adapt to the news that their protectors have raised the white flag in your direction. But soon, shock becomes desperation. Desperation becomes surrender, and surrender becomes domination. That's the trajectory that's already unfolding. The Pentagon's declaration was the catalyst. The city's panic is the proof. The scattering of your haters is the consequence. All these lines lead in one direction, your reign. And the rats, they can keep running, but there's nowhere left to hide. They're not just scattering, they're digging their own graves with every desperate movement. Understand this. In declaring you untouchable, the Pentagon didn't elevate you. They exposed themselves. They showed the world their limits, their inability, their boundaries. And in exposing themselves, they destroyed the illusion of safety your enemies clung to. That's why the panic is total. That's why the rats are everywhere. That's why the city is no longer breathing in rhythm, but hyperventilating in chaos. And you stand in the center, untouched, unmoved, undeniable. You are not part of the panic. You are the reason for it. You are the eye that sees while the city spirals. You are the gravity pulling their illusions apart. You are the word that reshaped the world. So let them scatter. Let the city convulse. Let the rats reveal themselves. Because this is only the first taste. Panic mode is the opening chapter, not the ending. And as the city drowns in uncertainty, as your haters claw at each other for survival, one thing becomes clear. This story has just begun. The declaration has been made, the panic has been triggered, the rats are scattering. But the real spectacle, the true unraveling, is only starting to unfold. Now the city enters its second stage. Panic alone is devastating, but panic evolving into desperation is catastrophic. Look at them. The streets are no longer pathways of ordinary life. They're theaters of paranoia. Every corner hosts whispers. Every alley carries rumors. Every screen broadcasts fragments of chaos. People don't walk anymore. They sprint. They don't talk in conversations. They argue in spirals of fear. Panic has turned civilians into messengers of doom, spreading anxiety like wildfire, each retelling of the Pentagon's announcement fueling the hysteria. The phrase untouchable has become both a badge and a bomb. A badge for you, etched in history, undeniable. And a bomb for them, detonating their confidence, shattering their illusions of safety. The city officials, powerless. Their voices crack as they try to impose calm, but their words are nothing against the echo of that Pentagon seal. When the highest fortress of power declares you untouchable, what credibility remains for anyone else? None. Authority has collapsed into a whisper. Order has collapsed into pretense. The rats who once aligned with officials are now abandoning them, clawing into basements, selling out their allies, hiding under the debris of the very empire they used to worship. And the irony couldn't be sharper. The same rats who once mocked you, who once filled their lungs with arrogance, now scurry with broken backs and wide eyes, stepping on each other to escape a shadow they cannot outrun. Watch closely. Their scatter isn't random, it's rabid. Panic breeds chaos, but desperation breeds betrayal. Your haters aren't just running, they're tearing each other apart. Former allies now leak secrets, trade names, expose weaknesses, all to deflect the inevitable. The survival instinct has turned their once organized opposition into a carnival of betrayal. Imagine the sight. Men and women who once sat in private rooms, plotting your downfall, now pointing fingers at one another, hissing like cornered vermin. Their pride is gone. Their unity is gone. Their courage was always fake, and panic stripped the mask off. The rats are not only scattering, they're devouring each other in the scramble. The Pentagon's declaration sits above it all like an execution order. Untouchable. That word doesn't just describe you. It defines the failure of everyone else. Because what does untouchable imply? It means the most powerful force in existence admits they can't cage you, can't trace you, can't destroy you. That admission becomes a verdict written across the skyline. The city reads it, the world absorbs it, and your haters choke on it. They once believed their alliances, their connections, their wealth, their voices could hurt you. Now every attempt to rise against you feels pathetic. Their claws scratch the air but find nothing to grip. Their schemes collapse before they're even born. Their running only amplifies your shadow. Step deeper into their psychology. Panic eats logic. Desperation eats dignity. And together they strip humans down to their most primal form. Your haters are rats, not just in metaphor, but in behavior, snapping at each other, hiding in corners, moving only when darkness covers them. Their scattering isn't courage, it's surrender. Because scattered rats never return. Once the nest is destroyed, they never rebuild. They only infest weaker places. And in this city, there is no weaker place left to infest. Your dominance has poisoned every corner. They run not to survive, but to prolong their collapse. And prolonging collapse is just another word for slow death. Meanwhile, the civilians, the civilians, are caught in the shockwave. Panic is not confined to your haters. It spreads across the city like a plague. Shops close in the middle of the day. Stock markets bleed numbers that no one can explain. Churches, mosques, temples overflow with trembling voices, begging their gods for safety from a force they can't even name without shaking. Taxi drivers whisper your name as though it's both salvation and curse. Parents hold their children tighter at night, staring out windows, afraid the world has changed beyond recognition. Because it has. The Pentagon has spoken, and when they speak, the Earth shifts. But this time, it didn't shift in their favor. It shifted in yours. And that single pivot has rewritten the psychology of the city. Every billboard, every headline, every screen becomes a mirror reflecting the same truth. Untouchable. And repetition makes it permanent. People no longer ask if you can be stopped. They ask what happens now that you can't. That shift is the epicenter of panic. And the rats? They feel it in their bones. They know the city no longer belongs to them. Their running isn't just fear, it's confession. They confess by fleeing. They confess by betraying. They confess by existing as caricatures of cowardice, each movement an admission that you stand tall while they crawl. But here's the darker truth. Panic mode in a city is not just noise, it's collapse disguised as motion. The noise of alarms, the chaos of crowds, the scatter of rats, all of it points to a deeper silence forming underneath. A silence of broken faith, broken confidence, broken order. The Pentagon's word has broken the spine of the city. No matter how many sirens ring, no matter how many officials scream for calm, the city knows the truth. They are no longer in charge. You are. Untouchable doesn't mean distance. It means dominance. It means permanence. It means they have lost. Look again at your haters. Their scatter isn't just survival, it's erasure. They're erasing themselves from the stage, slipping into holes, abandoning their names, leaving their pride in the gutter. Some run to foreign lands, thinking distance will save them. But rats who run abroad are still rats. Others bury themselves in denial, pretending the Pentagon's declaration isn't real. But denial is just cowardice dressed in cheap clothing. Still others attempt to rally. But their rallies look like funerals. Their speeches sound like eulogies. Because once panic mutates into desperation, unity is impossible. And once unity is gone, their downfall is irreversible. And yet, this is not the climax. This is the unraveling before the climax. Because panic is the seed, desperation is the sprout. But surrender, that is the fruit. And surrender is coming. You can see it in the rats' movements. They don't even run with direction anymore. They scatter aimlessly, some clawing at walls, others hiding in drains. Their movements reveal the inevitable. They're not strategizing, they're collapsing. The Pentagon's word destroyed their strategy before it began. And in their collapse, they make way for your dominance to spread unchecked. Philosophically, what's happening is simple. The word untouchable did not just crown you, it disarmed them. It stripped them of their identity. Haters need opposition to survive. They define themselves against someone else, but when their enemy becomes untouchable, they lose their own meaning. They are no longer critics, no longer challengers, no longer threats. They're background noise, scattering rats, squeaking in alleys. You've reduced them not by destroying them directly, but by forcing them to reveal they were never lions. They were rodents in lion skins. The panic of the city exposes the truth they tried to hide for years. They were never powerful. They were parasites, feeding on a system that no longer works. And now, the city watches them scatter. The civilians watch them convulse, and every pair of eyes turns back to you. Untouchable. That word echoes in the streets, in the boardrooms, in the headlines, in the minds of every man, woman, and child. The Pentagon branded you with it, but the city carved it into memory. And memory is permanent. Your haters cannot erase it, no matter how fast they scatter, no matter how loud they squeak. Their running only strengthens it. Their collapse only glorifies you. Their fear only amplifies your power. So here we are, the city in full panic mode, The Pentagon's word standing as law. Your haters scattered like vermin exposed to daylight. And yet, this isn't the finale. It's the escalation. Because what begins as panic doesn't end with panic. It ends with surrender. And surrender is coming fast. Faster than they realize. The city is teetering, the rats are running, and the Pentagon's word still hangs in the air like a judgment bell. Panic has become desperation. Desperation is becoming collapse. And collapse is the next chapter waiting to explode. Collapse is never loud in the beginning. It begins subtly. Traffic lights malfunctioning because no one dares maintain them. Grocery shelves emptying not because of shortages, but because people hoard in paranoia. But soon subtlety breaks into spectacle. Banks close their doors, afraid of mobs clawing for withdrawals. Schools lock their gates as parents refuse to send their children into a world spinning out of control. Supermarkets become battlegrounds for canned goods, water bottles, and the illusion of safety. The city is no longer living, it's surviving. And survival isn't order. It's chaos wearing desperation like a mask. Your haters, once bold voices in this chaos, are now irrelevant echoes. Their attempts to resist collapse look pathetic, like rats building dams against a tidal wave. They hold conferences no one attends. They post statements no one reads. They beg for loyalty from allies who already abandoned them. They used to strut through the city with arrogance. Now they crawl, begging for shadows to hide them. Each step they take is a confession that the Pentagon's word crushed their backbone. Untouchable. You are the iron pillar they cannot bend, the shadow they cannot outrun. Their scattering has become permanent. They aren't coming back. And the city knows this. Civilians sense the absence of opposition. The air itself feels different. Conversations no longer center on whether you exist or whether your power is real. They've moved past denial. They're in acceptance. Acceptance that you are here. Acceptance that you are declared untouchable. Acceptance that the Pentagon, their fortress of supposed control, bowed before your name. An acceptance, when fueled by panic, turns into submission. Submission is the soil in which surrender blooms. And bloom it will. Because nothing else can grow in this climate of collapse. Look at the symbolism. Your haters, once lions in their own imagination, are now rats in their exposed reality. They scatter, gnawing at each other, trampling over one another in the hunt for safety that doesn't exist. They scatter so violently that they reveal themselves to the world, and their exposure is their execution. Every alley becomes their grave. Every rumor becomes their obituary. They can run, but they cannot erase the truth. The Pentagon branded you untouchable, and that word is now written into the city's DNA. The Pentagon didn't just crown you with that word, they buried your enemies with it. Think of the psychological weight. When the mightiest institution admits it cannot harm you, every lesser enemy loses the will to even try. Why would they? What hope do they have when the fortress of power itself admitted defeat? That admission is not just a statement, it's a death sentence delivered without ceremony. And your haters heard it loudest. That's why they scatter like vermin, why their alliances crumble, why their speeches dissolve into babbling nonsense. They know they're finished. They know their end doesn't come in dramatic confrontation. It comes in humiliation, in erasure, in being reduced to squeaking rats clawing at garbage in alleys. But collapse isn't only about them. Collapse swallows the whole city. The skyline becomes a monument to panic. Dark towers where lights no longer shine. Avenues that once thrived, now empty, patrolled only by paranoia. Sirens wail endlessly, but they no longer calm the public. They only deepen the fear. Shops spray graffiti across their shutters. Closed, until safe. But safety is gone. The Pentagon's word removed the illusion of safety forever. The city is locked in survival mode, and survival mode is indistinguishable from war. Now comes the surrender, the most fascinating stage. Panic is primal, desperation is wild, collapse is inevitable. But surrender, that is philosophical. Surrender isn't when they run out of food. It isn't when the sirens stop. It's when the city collectively accepts a truth too big to deny. You are untouchable. Surrender is when their psychology flips from resistance to reverence. Surrender is when the rats stop running. Not because they found safety, but because they realize no amount of running will matter. Surrender is when they bow, not with pride, but with inevitability. And it's happening now. Watch closely. See the civilians? Their eyes no longer dart with denial. They gaze with reluctant awe. They see your haters scatter, and they know resistance is futile. They begin to whisper differently now, not with fear alone, but with reverence. Untouchable. They repeat it like a prayer, like a word of protection, because surrender is always disguised as reverence. When humans cannot fight a force, they worship it instead. And you are already entering that stage. Panic has turned into legend. Chaos has turned into mythology. The Pentagon's word has become scripture. Your haters, meanwhile, crumble into caricatures. They once fed off public fear of you, but now public fear has turned into public worship. And nothing kills a hater faster than being irrelevant. Their scattering is now mocked. They are pointed at in the streets, ridiculed as cowards. Look, another rat running. They're no longer feared. They're despised, laughed at, erased. Scattering turned them into symbols of weakness, and weakness, once exposed, never regains its mask. They are done. Their scattering was not just an escape. It was their obituary. And now the city bends. This is the stage no one admits, but everyone feels. Bending is not physical, it's psychological. The city bends to your shadow, not out of choice, but out of necessity. They bend because standing against you is impossible. They bend because the Pentagon said so. They bend because their haters have already been reduced to squeaking vermin, and vermin don't lead revolutions. They bend because bending is the only way left to survive. And soon, bending turns into kneeling, and kneeling turns into worship, and worship turns into permanence. Understand the psychology. Humans don't resist forever. They can panic, they can scatter, they can collapse, but eventually, they kneel. Because kneeling restores a sense of control. Even when they have none, kneeling lets them pretend they chose surrender. And this is the illusion they crave. They will kneel before you, not only because they must, but because kneeling will feel safer than running. And when safety and surrender merge, loyalty is born. That loyalty will not be pure. It will not be love, but it will be obedience. And obedience, enforced by fear, lasts longer than love ever could. The Pentagon's word sealed it. Untouchable. That word wasn't just a declaration. It was a throne carved out of chaos, cemented by fear, raised upon the collapse of your enemies. That throne doesn't need your presence to stand. It stands because the entire city holds it up, willingly or not. And your haters, they are the foundation you crushed beneath it. Their scattering built your pedestal. Their collapse raised your shadow. Their erasure made you eternal. And so the story closes, not with your destruction, but with theirs. The city in panic mode has now transformed into a city in surrender mode. Your haters scattered like rats. But rats don't return. They die in corners, unseen, forgotten. The Pentagon declared you untouchable, and that declaration has become prophecy. The city has accepted it. The people have submitted to it. The rats have perished under it. Panic was the spark. Collapse was the fire. Surrender is the ashes, and in those ashes, one figure stands, untouchable. You. So let the city bend. Let the rats scatter. Let the Pentagon's word echo for eternity. Because this is not just a chapter in their story. It is the end of their story. Panic mode was their undoing, not yours. Their scattering was their death march, not your threat. Their collapse was inevitable, because your untouchable shadow swallowed their fragile illusions. And as the dust settles, as the city adjusts to its new reality, one truth becomes permanent. You did not just survive. You did not just win. You became untouchable. And untouchable is forever.